What happens if you pour Epsom salt into your petunias? Most gardeners think it's just an old wives' tale, something your grandmother swore by but modern science ignores. But here's the thing, there's real chemistry behind this, and what it does to a struggling petunia might genuinely surprise you. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why some petunia beds explode with blooms while others just sit there looking tired and pale. And trust me, the answer is sitting in your bathroom cabinet right now. Before we dig in, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. I share simple science-backed growing tips like this every single week, and you don't want to miss the next one. Okay, let's get into it. So what exactly is Epsom salt? Despite the name, it's not table salt at all. Chemically, it's magnesium sulfate, a naturally occurring mineral compound made up of two things your plants actually crave, magnesium and sulfur, bound together with water molecules. That's it. No fillers, no synthetic additives, just a simple mineral crystal that dissolves easily in water. Let's break down what each part actually does, because understanding this is the key to understanding everything else in this video. First, magnesium. This is the star of the show. Magnesium sits right at the center of every single chlorophyll molecule in a plant's leaves. Chlorophyll is what makes leaves green, and more importantly, it's the engine of photosynthesis, the process that converts sunlight into the sugars and energy a plant needs to grow, flower, and survive. Without enough magnesium, a plant literally cannot build enough chlorophyll. Think of magnesium as the spark plug in the plant's solar-powered engine. No spark plug, no power. And when a plant is short on power, it can't push out new growth, and it definitely can't produce the kind of dense, colorful flowers that petunias are famous for. Magnesium also plays a supporting role in activating enzymes inside the plant, the tiny biological machines responsible for things like nutrient transport and energy production. So it's not just about color, it's about the plant's internal efficiency. Now let's talk about sulfur, the second half of this compound. Sulfur is often called a forgotten nutrient because gardeners rarely talk about it, but it's absolutely essential. Sulfur helps plants produce amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. Proteins, in turn, are what plants use to build new cells, repair damage, and grow stronger stems and roots. Sulfur also assists in the formation of certain enzymes and vitamins within the plant, and it plays a supporting role in helping the plant use nitrogen efficiently, which, as we'll get to in a moment, matters a lot for petunias specifically. One more thing worth mentioning. Epsom salt is highly water-soluble. That means when you dissolve it and apply it to soil, the plant can access the magnesium and sulfur almost immediately through its root system, rather than waiting weeks for it to break down like some slow-release fertilizers. This fast availability is exactly why gardeners have used it for generations as a quick pick-me-up for stressed or pale-looking plants. So in short, Epsom salt equals two simple ingredients: magnesium, which powers photosynthesis and greenness, and sulfur, which builds proteins and supports overall plant structure. Both are considered secondary nutrients, meaning plants need them in smaller amounts than nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, but smaller amounts doesn't mean less important. A tiny deficiency in either one can quietly stall a plant's growth without you ever realizing why. Now let's flip over to the petunia itself, because this is where everything starts clicking into place. Petunias are heavy bloomers. If you've ever grown them, you know they're not shy. A healthy petunia plant wants to be covered in flowers from late spring all the way through fall. But that kind of non-stop blooming is expensive, biologically speaking. It takes an enormous amount of energy and specific nutrients to keep producing flower after flower without slowing down. The big three nutrients petunias need are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the classic NPK you see on every fertilizer bag. Nitrogen fuels leafy green growth, phosphorus supports strong roots and flower and seed development, and potassium helps regulate water movement and overall plant vigor. Most petunia fertilizers are built around these three, but here's what a lot of gardeners miss. Petunias are also notoriously sensitive to magnesium deficiency, more so than many other bedding plants. But if you've ever seen a petunia with yellowing leaves but green veins, a pattern called intervenal chlorosis, that's almost always a magnesium shortage. It usually starts on the older, lower leaves first, since magnesium is mobile inside the plant and gets pulled from older growth to support new growth when supplies run low. Left untreated, the yellowing spreads upward, flowering slows down, and the whole plant just looks washed out and tired. Why are petunias so prone to this? Two reasons. First, they're prolific bloomers grown in containers and hanging baskets more often than in open ground, and container soil gets leached of magnesium fast every time you water, since the water drains right through and takes soluble minerals with it. Second, petunias are often grown in slightly acidic, well-drained potting mixes, and magnesium can become less available to roots in those conditions, especially if the mix is heavy in peat. This is exactly where Epsom salt earns its reputation. It doesn't replace a complete fertilizer. You still need that nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium base, but it fills a very specific gap that regular fertilizers often overlook. Most commercial fertilizers are formulated around NPK ratios and don't always include meaningful amounts of magnesium or sulfur. So a petunia can be getting fed every week and still be quietly starving for magnesium. And remember the sulfur piece we talked about earlier. Sulfur helps the plant actually use nitrogen more efficiently. So when a petunia gets a dose of magnesium and sulfur together, you're not just correcting a yellowing leaf problem, you're helping the plant make better use of the nitrogen fertilizer it's already receiving. That's the satisfying part of this puzzle. The liquid you're pouring on directly answers a gap the plant's biology is built to have, especially in container growing, which is how most people grow petunias anyway. When used the right way, the benefits are genuinely impressive. Gardeners consistently report greener, more vibrant foliage within days, stronger stems, and, the big one, a noticeable increase in flower production and flower size. Because magnesium is central to chlorophyll and energy production, correcting a deficiency essentially unlocks the plant's ability to perform at full capacity again. Some growers also find it helps roots establish faster after transplanting, since magnesium supports overall cellular function throughout the plant, not just in the leaves. But, and this is important, Epsom salt is not a magic potion you can dump on endlessly. Here's the warning part, and I want you to really pay attention to this. Magnesium sulfate is still a salt, and too much of any salt in soil creates a real problem. It disrupts the natural balance of water movement in and out of plant roots. When soil becomes overly salty, it actually becomes harder for roots to absorb water, even if the soil is moist, a process called osmotic stress. The plant essentially becomes dehydrated while sitting in wet soil. Symptoms of overuse include scorched, crispy leaf edges, wilting despite regular watering, stunted growth, and in severe or repeated cases, root damage that can kill the plant entirely. There's also a nutrient imbalance risk. Too much magnesium in the soil can actually interfere with the plant's ability to take up calcium and potassium, two other nutrients petunias need for sturdy cell walls and overall vigor. So overusing Epsom salt to fix one problem can quietly create a new one. The lesson here is simple. This is a targeted, occasional supplement, not a weekly feeding routine, and definitely not a substitute for balanced fertilizer. Used with restraint and the right technique, which I'll walk you through right now, it's a safe, effective tool. Used carelessly, it can genuinely stress or kill your petunias. Let's get practical. Here's exactly how to prepare and apply Epsom salt to your petunias, step by step. Step 1. Gather your tools. You'll need plain Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate, no additives or fragrances, a watering can or spray bottle, a measuring spoon, and lukewarm water. Step 2. Mix your solution. For soil application, dissolve 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt into 1 gallon of water. That's roughly 1 liter of water per teaspoon if you're working with smaller batches. Stir thoroughly until the granules are completely dissolved. Undissolved salt sitting directly against roots can cause localized burning, so don't rush this step. Step 3. Apply at the base. Pour the solution slowly and directly into the soil around the base of the plant, avoiding the stem itself. For potted or hanging basket petunias, water evenly around the entire container so the solution reaches the whole root zone, not just one side. Step 4. Water normally afterward, but not immediately. Let the solution soak in on its own. Avoid double watering right after application, since that can just wash the nutrients straight through the drainage holes before roots have a chance to absorb them. Step 5. Optional foliar method. If you want faster results, especially for correcting visible yellowing, you can mix a lighter solution, about 1 tablespoon per gallon, into a spray bottle and mist the leaves directly, focusing on the undersides where absorption happens more efficiently. This gets magnesium into the plant through the leaf tissue itself, bypassing the soil step entirely. Step 6. Observe before repeating. Don't reapply just because you're excited about the results. Give the plant time to actually respond, which we'll cover in the timing section next. A quick but important note, always test on a small area first if you've never used this on your petunias before, especially if they're in containers with limited soil volume, since containers concentrate salts faster than garden beds. And never apply to dry, drought-stressed soil. Always water your plant normally first, then apply the Epsom salt solution once the soil has some baseline moisture. This prevents the concentrated solution from shocking already stressed roots. Timing matters just as much as the mixture itself, so let's be really clear about when to use this and when to leave it alone. Do not apply Epsom salt during extreme heat, especially in the middle of the day when temperatures are high and the sun is intense. Applying any fertilizer-like solution during peak heat stress can shock the plant and increase the risk of leaf burn, particularly with the foliar spray method. Also avoid applying it to plants that are already wilting from drought stress, newly transplanted seedlings still establishing their root systems, or plants sitting in already waterlogged or poorly draining soil, since adding more liquid to saturated soil just compounds the root stress problem. You should also skip it during the plant's earliest seedling stage. Young petunias with immature root systems are far more sensitive to salt concentration than mature, established plants. So wait until your petunias have developed a solid set of true leaves and are actively growing before introducing this. Now for the ideal conditions. The best time to apply Epsom salt is early morning or early evening, when temperatures are cooler and the plant isn't under heat stress. This is especially true for the foliar spray method, since cooler, calmer conditions reduce evaporation and give the leaves time to absorb the solution before the sun gets intense. Apply it to actively growing, established petunias, ideally right around the start of the blooming season, or whenever you notice early signs of magnesium deficiency, like that pale, intervenal yellowing on the lower leaves. As for frequency, this is where restraint really matters. For soil applications, once every 4 weeks is plenty during the active growing season. If you're using the foliar spray method for a faster correction, you can apply it every 2 weeks, but only for a maximum of 2 to 3 applications before switching back to the slower, less frequent soil method. Once your petunias show healthy, deep green growth and strong blooming, you can scale back to a light maintenance dose once a month, or even less if your regular fertilizer already contains magnesium. So how fast will you actually see something happen? Here's what a realistic timeline looks like. Within the first 3 to 5 days, especially with the foliar spray method, you'll typically notice the first subtle shift. Leaves that were looking pale or yellowish around the edges start regaining a deeper, richer green color, particularly on newer growth. The plant often looks a little more alive, almost like it's stretching upward with new energy. By the 1 to 2 week mark, you should start seeing new leaf growth coming in noticeably greener and more vigorous than the older leaves, plus the beginning of increased bud formation. This is the stage where the connection between magnesium, chlorophyll, and blooming really becomes visible. By 3 to 4 weeks, most gardeners report a clear increase in flower count and flower size, along with sturdier stems and a fuller, bushier overall shape. The plant essentially looks like it's hit a second wind, picking up energy and output right when it might otherwise have started to slow down. Keep in mind, results vary depending on how deficient your soil actually was to begin with. A petunia with a mild early-stage deficiency will bounce back faster than one that's been struggling for weeks. Patience and consistency, paired with restraint, are what actually make this work. And that's the real story behind Epsom salt and petunias. It's not magic, it's simple chemistry meeting a very specific plant need. Used correctly, in the right amount, at the right time, it can genuinely transform a tired, pale petunia into a lush, blooming showstopper. Used carelessly, it can do the opposite. So respect the dose, respect the timing, and let your plants tell you what they need. If this video helped you understand your petunias a little better, do me a favor and hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment letting me know how your petunias are doing. I've got more simple, science-backed growing tips coming every week, and I'd love to have you back for the next one. Until then, happy growing, and I'll see you in the next video.